Welcome to the lockout edition of the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm
Jesse.
Yep.
And I'm Eli.
And we were going to record. We went to Camden Yards. We were stood out on Utah Street banging on the gates of Oriole Park. And Peter Angelos would not wake up from his slumber to allow us in. So we've decided to revert back to the Warehouse Podcast studios that don't exist and record from here. Boys, how are we doing?
I don't know. I mean, I saw Peter in there. You know, he definitely made eye contact, and that was the part that hurt the most. There was a deliberate ignorance of us, and now I'm just back in my bedroom in the middle of Florida, and yeah.
Well, that's interesting for two reasons. One, that you saw Peter Angelos, which is kind of news because I feel like we haven't seen Peter Angelos in a long time. Yeah, and two, that in this version of history, he lives at the warehouse. But I guess I set that part up. So
I mean, he could have been just popping in. I'm not sure that the dude is living there. But
he just took a nap.
Yeah, if he chose to, I'm sure there would be fine accommodations. Seeing as though it's one of the nicest parks in baseball.
That's true. And if I owned a baseball team, I would definitely have a little nap room built into the stadium somewhere. That seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah,
and a fridge full of drinks. Yeah.
That's so average. That's such an average thing to have at any workplace. But Jesse's like,
most people have a fridge.
Just a break room.
That's stocked with drinks.
Yeah. Yes,
that was the key component of it. Yeah.
I mean, you could go down to the concession stand and get a fountain drink, but not the same.
I guess the other thing to me is is it only drinks that you want in this fridge, Jess? I mean,
yes.
Why are you so cued in on it having drinks?
Yeah. I mean, and food too would be good. I mean, yeah.
Just a regular. It's just a fridge, a regular fridge.
Just like any other refrigerator.
Oh man.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess you should just hire a personal chef too while he's at it. I mean, why not? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's got the money for it.
Or get this, guys. You do Jesse's fridge idea and then wait for it. You put a microwave right next to it and you make that available. So not only can you have cold drinks, you can have hot food.
Incredible.
And if you really wanted it, I guess you could heat up a drink too.
Wow. And then maybe you have bagels on Friday mornings. It'll just be any other office job in existence.
We had not yet talked about a toaster yet, though. I'm not sure. I don't know. Who eats a non-toasted bagel?
You're going to offend people. There's people out there that do. I definitely have days back when I worked in an office, that I would eat an untoasted bagel because the line for the toaster oven was just so long. And I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Right. But that's out of desperation. That's true. This is the way to go.
I want it like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But okay, we shouldn't sensationalize Peter Angelos. He's a villain in this situation right now. He's one of the 30 villains going on right now because we are locked out. Well, not us. We're not players, but the players are locked out.
I feel locked out.
I know. Well, yeah, the players.
I definitely feel locked out.
It certainly put a halt to all the exciting baseball news that was going on, which is a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, the offseason was super exciting for 12 minutes there.
Yeah.
And then it really, really came to a halt quickly. And that's probably because you're not allowed to make transactions anymore.
Yeah.
Lockout had something to do with that. Yeah.
Right. Although, actually, did you guys see that the Players Association and MLB came to an agreement on Justin Verlander's contract? And for whatever reason, they just allowed that to happen in the middle of the lockout.
Yeah, I saw that apparently it was originally submitted before the lockout, but then they needed to change the language for some reason. And the players and the union were like, that's fine. We can do that. So now, yeah, you're right. In the middle of the lockout, Verlander officially signed, which is so odd. But
it is odd.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just saying that probably had something to do with Justin Verlander being Justin Verlander, I would think.
Yeah, this is and I'm sure he has quite a loud voice in the players union, having been in the league for 15 years at this point. So makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Lockout's going on. There's no new updates that we're aware of in terms of negotiations. We did talk about some of the big sticking points, I think, a few weeks ago when we had a podcast, and that's all the same stuff happening. Yeah, I mean, it's a real bummer, and hopefully we get something sorted out by spring training. And because if we don't, I think that a loss of games is going to be inevitable if we don't have something by mid-February, because you're going to need a spring training of some kind.
Yeah, just a couple quick things I will say about this. So, one thing, I of course want them to come to an agreement. Don't get me wrong. I do. I don't want the agreement to be the players giving in to all the demands of the ownership, right? So I don't want an agreement just for the sake of an agreement. I want an agreement that is good for the players too. So that's the one thing. And I will say MLB and the owners are being like very brazen about what they're doing here. Like in a, just barely coded language, right?
Right.
Rob Manfred, said, well, we're doing the lockout because we think that this will bring us to an agreement. And what he's really saying, like, it's not even coded, but what he's really saying is this is a tactic we are going to use to make the players give in to our demands. And we think we can make them cave by doing this. So this is why we're doing this. And, I definitely hope, the Players Association is a pretty powerful organization, I would say. They do from my eyes, they do a very good job representing the players, and so I hope that this lockout doesn't affect anything from their perspective, but it's intimidating, and it's an unstable situation for the players to be involved in. So that's what the ownership wants.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to throw out too, Manfred wrote this letter as soon as MLB instituted the lockout, and it was loaded was the word I was going for there. It was loaded with all sorts of garbage, but there was this one thing in particular. The MLB Players Association came out and said, we were trying to negotiate, and we just want to say this lockout is not something that's like mandated by law. There's nothing in the previous collective bargaining agreement that says you have to lock us out. There's really nothing driving this besides the owners want it to. And, they were kind of like, we're here ready to negotiate. And Rob Manfred's letter says, this defensive lockout was necessary because the Players Association's vision for Major League Baseball would threaten the ability of most teams to be competitive. It's simply not a viable option. From the beginning, the MLBPA has been unwilling to move from their starting position, compromise, or collaborate on solutions. And so it's just, this extremely, as Jesse said, this brazen blame. They're not even trying to say like, oh, darn it, we couldn't figure it out. It's just like, oh no, it's their fault. And we were pushed into this position. We had to do this.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, the thing is that, they don't have to do this lockout. I think the most recent example of the showing that they don't have to do it is 1994. They entered that season without a CBA agreement, and both the players and the MLB agreed. I'm sorry, MLB. People get very angry online when you call
they
it
really
the MLB. I'm sorry, MLB. Came into 1994 without an agreement. They decided to play anyway. And then in August, the players struck and they lost the World Series. They lost the postseason. The Montreal Expos probably lost their best chance at a World Series, yada, yada, yada. They don't have to do this. They've decided to do it. And I think they decided to do it to make, I guess, the players look bad. The players look greedy. But, I mean, I know I consume a certain type of media, and I'm sure there's bias in that media. But everything I see online is blaming owners and MLB for this lockout. Almost nobody is blaming the players. So to my eye, this is not going the way that Major League Baseball would like for it to go. And I hope it continues that way, because at the end of the day, the players just want a bigger piece of the pie. Their piece of the pie has been shrinking more and more. There's been competitive imbalance issues that need to be sorted out. There's issues with compensation for not top tier players, not low tier players, but like these players in the middle that needs to be sorted out. And the owners just got to pay up. That's the reality of the situation. These ownership groups have plenty of money to pay these players way more money. They choose not to, and it's ridiculous. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, just real quick, Tyler. I threw I quote tweeted John Shepard, but he threw out something really interesting and kind of what you said about like that middle tier of players. So he threw out in 2015, the median salary in baseball was $1.65 million. In 2021, it was $1.15 million. And he said that decrease has been steady. It's not like directed by COVID. And a large portion of why that's happening is out of 902 opening day players, half of the money for salaries in baseball were dedicated to 100 players, a 25% increase. So I don't know, like people talk about the wealth gap in America, it's kind of like that, they're like the middle class of baseball free agents is weakening. And I saw something else that it's something along the lines of like half of the players that participated in MLB last year were on the league minimum, right? So, they're packing rosters with guys making less and less and less and understanding. And, like strictly from a business perspective, you see why they're doing it. If we can get 90% of the productivity from somebody making the league minimum, rather than going and getting a free agent for $8 million or whatever, like from a business standpoint, that makes sense. But it weakens like the player's ability to make money. It weakens kind of the competitive market that free agency should be. And it makes players unhappy. So not a perfect system by any means, of course.
No, and I don't think any of us are going to be able to solve that issue today. We are not labor negotiators. We're not labor lawyers, but we certainly are on the side of the players and the workers and all that, because I think the type of person that probably listens to us agrees with us on this point. But what I will say anyway is like, they try to pit the players against the average working man in America. I think sometimes when you see things in the media, it's like, oh, these millionaires that get to play a children's game are complaining about not getting enough millions. And like Eli just said, half of them are not millionaires. Like they make less than $1 million a year. And then also you have to think about, they're not playing this game for 20 years. Like you think, they're not all Albert Pujols. They're not all Fernando Tatis, who just got a 10-year deal. These are guys that get up to the bigs for a cup of coffee. So they're not even making the league minimum because you're only up for a few weeks here or there. These are guys that maybe they stick in the league for a year or two. They make $1 million altogether. Then they're out on the street with no job experience in anything other than baseball. Maybe they have a bachelor's degree, but most of them don't. And they're just their job prospects are limited. So it's not millionaires versus billionaires. It's like literally the working man against these evil corporations, in my mind, at least.
Yeah. I mean, like even
Definitely.
Beyond that though, I mean, the way that I look at it is, the value of what these players are putting out there is not like determined by them, right? It's us as the consumers telling these players that they're worth millions and the product that they put on the field is worth millions. So like we shouldn't fault them, for making too much money when we are the ones who put all the money into the business as it is. Mm-hmm. And then, beyond that, like I kind of look at it and, baseball revenue has gone up in recent years, obviously besides COVID, but I think 2019, it was over a $10 billion industry for the year. And so you look at that and you juxtapose that with seeing that the players' share of revenue over the last 30 years has gone down like 10%. That's really what this is about, is the pie is getting bigger, but the owners are taking larger and larger shares of that. And really, like, I don't know, even though they make $500,000 on the league minimum salary, the fact of the matter is that they make that much money because you and I turn in and like we flip on the TV and we check them out and we're sitting here making a podcast about them. Mm-hmm. And people love it. So like that's why they are actually worth that money, because what they provide to us, we have put a value on as a society.
But I think also the important point that I don't want Tyler's point to get lost in what you just said is that I think a lot of people think that the baseball players are a lot richer than they actually are, right? I mean, not all of them, the vast majority of them, don't have Manny Machado's $300 million contract, right? Most of them, are making, 1 million, many times less than $1 million. But, I mean, for a guy to even, a Major League Baseball player to be making even $10 million a year, you have to be a pretty solid baseball player to get that. And most baseball players are not making $10 million this upcoming season or made it last season or anything like that. So this isn't a bunch of, guys that are, making, 50, $100 million a year and they want $200 million. No, this is, it's a lot different than that kind of situation. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and the other thing on your point with the revenue, Eli, is like your point's so true. And it also doesn't include that they do some spreadsheet gymnastics to determine what this revenue is. I'm sure there are elements of money they make that are not included in that revenue figure that the players don't even have a chance to get. So, this is the story of America in scale, but we're not going to get into all that stuff. the one thing I will say is first of all, like, I think, kind of what our role here is to kind of make sure that the people listening to this are aware of what's happening, know what's going on. And, but also I think that it's really important for, fans to kind of see how this operates and to see how this goes. Because, a lot of fans, they don't pay attention to a lot of this and they just expect baseball. They know that baseball will be there every year and just that's how it is. Right. But it's really important, I think, to know that there is, a process and labor negotiations and all of these mechanics behind the scenes that are operating at work that people very much take for granted. Right. And I think that this lockout and these kind of labor disputes are very important for people to see and to see demonstrated on a big scale. So for educational purposes, I think that it's good that this is happening too. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a good point you make about like people aren't paying attention to it just yet, because I'm sure that won't happen like on a nationwide scale probably until March or April, when people are like, oh yeah, baseball season. Oh wait, what's going on? So
yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. And hopefully we don't have to be dealing with it by then, but if they do, we'll try and keep talking about it as developments come, which to this point there really haven't been any, which maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the fact that we haven't heard about it is the two sides are negotiating in good faith, but we'll see. All right, let's talk Orioles baseball, because this is, after all, an Orioles podcast. The Orioles have done some things this offseason. Now, not
before the lockout. Yeah. So I think some of these are official. One of them is not official, but it's going to happen. We'll talk about all that stuff. But no 40-man roster moves can happen during the lockout. So the only thing that's happened officially since December 1st is some minor league stuff.
But prior to that, the Orioles did agree and sign Rougned Odor to a major league contract. I think we talked about him last year when there was a rumor the Orioles were looking at him, and none of us wanted him.
Right.
I mean, do we feel any different now?
We still don't. Yeah. No. Go ahead, Jess.
No, go ahead, Eli.
No, I'm just gonna bite my tongue off. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, don't get me wrong. When Rougned Odor first came into the league and came into, was on the playoff Rangers teams, I used to love him as a player. I really did. But it's been, I think the Orioles could use a little more depth for whatever that's worth. But I think also that, he might be hoped to be a reclamation project for the Orioles. Unfortunately, it's been so long since Odor has been, a productive player at the major league level that it feels like he just doesn't have it in him at this point. I think it was probably like 2017. I'm pretty sure was the last time he was like a pretty a semi-major league caliber player. So so it's been a long time, and it's kind of I mean, it's a little not to the same degree and not to the same severity. It is a little reminiscent of Chris Davis because it wasn't like Odor had a serious injury or had uh something drastic happen in his career that kind of derailed his career. He just started to not play very well. So
Yeah, I don't know. My take on him with regard to the Chris Davis thing is like, Chris Davis just clearly lost all of his talent. Odor still has like a pretty good hard hit rate. Like it's dropped off pretty significantly in the last 2 years, but people have learned they just don't have to throw him a strike in order to get him to swing. He's got like one of the worst chase rates, one of the worst K rates in the MLB. And so I don't know. I think this is a little bit more of people just figuring him out. That being said, like, he has put up 30 home run seasons in the past. He is somebody who's got some lefty pop, and we only need to pay him the league minimum because the Rangers are still paying him from this contract they signed him to way back in the day. The Orioles kind of throughout their minor league system have really, really been kind of revolutionizing guys' approaches. You look at like, I don't know, Kyle Stowers was probably the best example from this past season where, he really started getting selective on pitches. It led him to higher walk rates. He did also strike out a bit more because he was just being so patient. But I think that the Orioles have shown some success in kind of refining guys' approaches. And Odor, I think, is the perfect example of if you can do that successfully with him, he's clearly got pop. And, he's a lefty. Like our entire infield is all righties right now, I think, unless I'm messing that up. Yeah, no, our entire infield's righties. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it's a situation where there's like absolutely nothing to lose because you are paying this guy the league minimum and you can just cut him if you really want to. And it's not a big hit. That being said, like, do I have any hope for Rougned Odor to be even a league average player next year? No, I don't. Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand the criticism, and I'm right there with you. Like, this is not an earth-shattering move. This is not the guy that catapults the Orioles into playoff contention or anything like that. I do look at the roster, and I see that he's also clearly going to be the starting second baseman unless they sign somebody else. Rougned Odor is the starting second baseman. I don't absolutely hate that, like a year, considering we just came off a year in which we saw Rio Ruiz play a lot at second. We saw Pat Valleca play a lot at second. We saw Jahmai Jones come up, look real rough at second base. Other guys on the 40-man roster, Rylan Bannon had a tough year in the minors, although he picked it up at the end with the power stuff. Terrin Vavra is definitely interesting to me, but he's a new guy on the 40-man, probably not breaking camp with the MLB team anyway. So I see a starter, which that's good. I see a guy that, according to Baseball Savant, rates very well with outs above average. So that's good defense, which I like with our young pitching staff. And I also see a guy that, because I get involved in, or I see a lot of like Yankee Twitter stuff. They like kind of loved his like rah like leadership thing last year he had with the Yankees. He was like one of the most vocal guys on the team. He was going to the mound, talking to young pitchers. He was doing a lot of that stuff. So, I'm trying to rationalize, like, what are the Orioles doing? They're not getting a guy necessarily just to fill a spot because they could do that other ways. I'm trying to find like the logic in getting Rougned Odor. And is he going to be good? Depends on what your definition of good is, but probably not. But is he going to bring an element to the team that we didn't currently have on the roster? I think probably yes. And there is that little bit of upside that you kind of mentioned, Eli. And also, like, his numbers were better last year than they were in 2020. Like, he did see improvement pretty much across the board in a lot of stuff. He walked more, he struck out less. There's some reason to think like he's figured something out a little bit. Now, how much of that is hitting at Yankee Stadium last year? I don't know, but
he also hit 202 last year. Like that.
Oh yeah.
Let's not exaggerate too much.
He was not good at all, but his OPS plus was 82, which is not good, but it's at second base, sort of an offensive depressed position anyway.
That's true.
I don't know. I definitely don't love the move, but like I can see the logic in it a little bit, and like it's fine. I mean, what we experienced with the Orioles infield last year was so catastrophic. Apart from like Ramon Urias, it was I'm okay with it. And again, he's getting paid what, $570K by the Orioles to do it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever.
I guess I feel like, well, one, I'm not as convinced as Tyler is that he is going to be the starting second baseman. I mean, I'm a little surprised you said that. I'm a little surprised
Here we go.
You're totally giving up on Jahmai Jones.
I'm not giving up on Jahmai Jones like long term, but I don't think you
but
can
immediately
I don't think you can go into 2021 and say Jahmai Jones is our second baseman. There's nothing. Rougned Odor showed more last year than Jahmai Jones did.
Right. Yeah.
You're in a rough spot if that's the assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that you can't assume that, but I would also think that if Jahmai Jones has a better spring, that Jahmai Jones would probably be starting there over Rougned Odor, especially if it's like by a considerable margin. But also, I think there are also, other options. I mean, it's possible Jorge Mateo swings over to second base. So I don't know. I mean, if they really like Gutierrez and his glove, they have him at third and Urias at second. Mateo might be the second baseman. So I don't know. I just think there are a lot of possibilities that I definitely don't think Odor is a lock for it. That's all.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I will say, like, that's kind of how my mind was with Yolmer Sanchez last year too, and then he didn't even make it to opening day. So there's definitely, and he had a Gold Glove. So if you're talking about like defensively, not that Gold Gloves are everything, but you know what I'm saying. So yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I we'll see, and also this offseason's weird, and I don't know how much time there's going to be between end of lockout and opening day to figure something out, but
is there an opening day? That's the other thing.
Right. This could all be pointless for us to talk about.
Right. Yeah. There's no 2022 baseball, so
exactly.
Right.
All right. The other big move we'll talk about that I don't think this one is official, but I think as soon as the lockout ends, it will be official. Is the Orioles signed Jordan Lyles to a 1-year, $7 million deal. And there looks like there's a club option for 2023 for $10 million. Eli, you called this a few episodes ago. I mean, do you want to give some insight into why you thought this would happen and inevitably why it did happen?
Yeah. So, I was obviously texting Michael Elias, and he kind of gave me the drop that this was in the works.
Mm-hmm.
But the real version is I went and I saw that, he was a free agent. He threw 180 innings last year, and every single one of those innings was bad. And I said, you know what? That's a guy that the Orioles can lock down. And, they, to their credit, they went out, they executed, they locked him down. Well, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it's been reported and anticipated that as soon as the lockout's done, it'll be official. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that Lyles is, he's somebody who really did have some solid seasons a couple of years ago. That being said, he's just going to come eat innings for us. And that is just about the most valuable thing that he could provide. Obviously, we're going to keep, we're going to keep rotating these young guys in, but you cannot count on like Bruce Zimmerman, Keegan Aiken, Zach Lothar, Alexander Wells. You can't even really count on Grayson to come in and hold down a spot every fifth day. Like, the jump from the minor leagues to the majors is big. These guys still need time to develop clearly. It just is what it is. And so you need somebody to come in and, quite frankly, just give the bullpen a break. If he can go out there and he can eat 5-6 innings, that's a win, because we saw so many times last year where our starters are getting pulled after seeing the order one time because they can't get through it a second. It's halfway through the third inning, and the bullpen's just getting decimated. So I think this was a good value pickup. That being said, I'm actually a little surprised. I think the actual contract was like $5.5 million this year with a $500,000 signing bonus. And then the extra $1 million is a buyout on next year's club option. And So you know that kind of gets like factored in when they report the deal. But still, like $7 million for, quite frankly, somebody who's not very good. Like, I don't know, Michael Wacha just signed for less than that. Like, I think Bundy signed for less than that. There are any number of names that signed for less than that. So just kind of the price that we were willing to pay on him is interesting. But that being said, like, I think it's money well spent. And I think he'll just be a solidifying force, which is pretty much all you can ask for us.
Yeah. Jesse, would you say that he's reliable? I'm trying to do a pun there.
That's funny. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, I definitely have the confidence that he will be in the rotation. I mean, he'll definitely be a starting pitcher for the Orioles.
Oh wow, you're gonna say that right now? Far out.
If there's Jesse,
I'm surprised by your confidence.
No, I mean, he might even be the ace if John Means has some sort of injury heading into the season.
Oh gosh.
I mean, yeah.
Hey, Jesse,
hopefully,
don't you put that evil on John Means? Yeah. Don't you put that evil on John Means?
Okay. All I'm saying, or if he got traded, right?
Wow.
So all I'm saying is, without John Means in the picture, I would say Jordan Lyles would have an 80% chance of being the number one starter in our rotation. So,
yeah,
hashtag bona fide.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I mean, no, kind of like Eli said, for other reasons. I think this is why the Orioles want him. He's a veteran. We can, if nothing else, we can count on him to eat up some innings. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will say about what Eli's saying is, yes, overall, he's not a very good pitcher in the sense that he doesn't limit the runs very much, but he does have some good starts here and there where he will go 6 or 7 and give up, less than 3 or something like that. So he does have quality starts in him, and it's just not. He also, gives up runs. So I mean but right, with a team that is not trying to win games, this is really the perfect person you could ask for.
Yeah, he gives me like you guys remember when like Kevin Millwood was the Orioles ace?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Kevin Millwood at his best earlier in his career was very good, but by the time the Orioles had him, he was not very good. And that's Jordan Lyles. But I would take a Kevin Millwood era Jordan Lyles season. That's fine.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Lyles, to his credit, and I think this is probably one thing the Orioles are looking at, he is like pretty top tier in terms of curveball spin, and I think his curveball actually has like something like 57 inches of vertical drop on the average pitch. So he does have a really like solid breaking ball, one good offering. Like the Orioles might be able to tweak the pitch repertoire a little bit and figure something out there. And I did see like pretty low batting average against that pitch. So I maybe the Orioles have some ideas on what they can do to play with him a little bit, make him a little bit more effective. He does have, one pretty solid out pitch in that.
Yeah. And that's really all the Orioles need right now. And they're trying to work with pitch development and pitch design and all that stuff. And maybe 31-year-old Jordan Lyles will figure stuff out in one of the most hitter-friendly parks in the league against the toughest lineups in baseball in the AL East. We'll see.
He's been around for 10 years. He debuted in Major League Baseball when he was 20. So
he is like the rebuild pitcher, though. Like, look at every team he's with throughout his career. He's like with the Astros when they were terrible. He was with, the Rockies. Yeah, they were bad. Texas while they're rebuilding, and now they spend a bunch and they get rid of him. And I mean, it's fine. He plays a role, and that role has some value clearly, and I'll be cheering for him. So we'll see.
Yeah. We're going to be big Jordan Lyles fans. So,
of course. Okay, another pickup was Cionel. I think I said that correct. Yeah, Cionel Perez, left-handed pitcher. The Orioles claimed him off of waivers. I think he was he with the Reds last year?
Yeah, with the Reds.
The Reds last year, but as Eli's noted here in our outline, he was with the Astros while Elias was there. Signed him back in 2016 out of Cuba. Eli, do you want to give sort of a scouting report there?
Yeah. Basically, so he mostly, in the MLB, he's only worked as a reliever. He does kind of throughout his AAA time has split time and has performed pretty well as a starter. I definitely do not anticipate we use him as a starter. He's more of a 2-pitch guy. He's got like a pretty hard fastball. It averages like 96, but it's got very, very little movement. His go-to is a slider, though, that actually, is pretty elite. I was checking out Baseball Savant earlier. It's got like 63% more horizontal break than the average slider in the MLB. It's got an extra 19%, like an extra 7 inches of vertical drop. So, it's a really effective pitch. The problem with this dude is he walked 7.5 guys per 9 last year. Just like atrocious command. And I don't know. Temper your expectations, but the stuff is pretty good. And if we can get his slider playing properly off the fastball and we can dial that in a little bit, he definitely could be pretty effective.
Yeah, so it sounds kind of Tanner Scott-ish. Doesn't throw quite as hard as Tanner Scott, but he's left-handed, throws hard, has a slider. So we'll see. I mean, I can't see having both of them in the bullpen at the same time, but maybe. I don't know. I mean, why not? Try it out.
If they're both good.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do think that saying him, Tanner Scott, and Paul Fry is a little bit unrealistic. I think that, I don't know, 3 lefties is more than you usually see.
Yeah. Well, and we'll see. I mean, that's going to be a whole battle in the spring that'll be interesting to follow if we have a spring training. That'll be interesting to follow because, I don't know, Paul Fry, you wonder if the Orioles will try and trade one of those guys at some point to a team that needs some bullpen help, but you're not going to get a lot for any of them. But the Orioles offered arbitration to Paul Fry and Tanner Scott, so we'll see what they do. Jesse, any thoughts on Perez or the type of pitcher he is?
I mean, just the fact that, I mean, it's not surprising that the Orioles came for him. As far as, I mean, from 2 perspectives, obviously Elias has had interest in him before, but also, this seems like one of the guys the Orioles think they can work with, right? So there's obviously a lot of raw ability there. So hopefully the Orioles can find something.
Yeah, absolutely. Other moves to talk about: Lucious Fox. The Orioles had him for like 5 days or something ridiculously short.
I think it was 11 days.
11 days.
Believe
okay.
it or not.
11 days. Yeah. They got him from the Royals, and then I think when they were cutting things, I can't remember exactly what the time frame was, but they cut him down. They tried to waive him and get him through waivers, but didn't work out. The Nationals nabbed him before we ever even recorded a podcast. Did you guys have any like dreams of Lucious Fox doing great things in a Royals uniform, or does this not really matter to you?
I wouldn't say I had dreams, but the thing that I remember, so I can't claim that this actually happened, but I'm like 95% sure it was him.
Okay.
There was a video. So he's from the Bahamas, and he was a top 100 prospect, like one of the top international signings of his year. And there was a video. They went down to the Bahamas and they had a home run derby, just like blasting balls into the ocean. And Lucious Fox was one of the guys there. And since then, I had this affinity for him. I liked him. And I'm not, convinced that that would have meant anything for his on-field play. But he's got a cool name. He's got a lot of power and a lot of speed. And that's about it.
Nice.
That's all I know.
I mean, that's enough. That's enough
or
to
I
sign.
Think no. I guess I got to look it up now. Jesse, start talking.
I remember him being a top 100 prospect. So, like, I recognized the name when we nabbed him. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And the Orioles definitely need infield help. But then I looked at some of his performance down in the minors, and I wasn't too terribly upset that they lost him. But, Jesse, maybe you have different thoughts.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I probably would have been excited about him when he was a top 100 prospect, but at this point, not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it also kind of serves as like a reminder that top 100 prospects, especially like the back end of the top 100, is still a little bit random. I think Jahmai Jones was a top 100 prospect at one point. Yusniel Diaz was a top 100 prospect. We know that's kind of gone off the rails a little bit. So top 100 prospect sounds nice, but it doesn't guarantee future success.
They're still prospects after all. Yeah.
So I can confirm it was actually, he was one of the organizers of it, but it also had like Bo Bichette, Lewis Brinson, Jonathan India, and Jazz Chisholm. So there were some dudes down there, and there was
This was
some
in the
cool
Bahamas?
videos.
In the Bahamas.
Yeah, in the Bahamas.
Oh, God.
Although Brinson just got DFA'd, I thought a little while ago.
Yeah, I mean, this was a couple of years ago when they were all hot prospects. I think it might have even been like before Bo came up.
Well, and look, the fact that any of them get to the major leagues, like that alone, you're an elite baseball player of the world. You know what I mean? Like they can do things that the average like D1 player cannot do. So it's impressive nonetheless. Okay, sticking in the infield and also talking about players that have left the 40-man roster, Richie Martin was outrighted and sent to AAA Norfolk. And I was happy about it. I like Richie Martin, but I think his time on the 40-man roster, it was ready to be over. He struggled with injury. He struggled offensively a lot. Defensively, he's never really lived up to like what we were told he was going to be when the Orioles made him the top Rule 5 pick a few years ago. Jesse, are you at all disappointed that Richie Martin is no longer on the Orioles 40-man roster?
No, not really. I mean, I was pulling for him when we got him, but as you have said, it just never really worked out. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it would be more tempting to keep him on if he did have the amazing glove that we had hoped he would. But you don't have the glove and you hit at a terrible clip. That's tough to overcome unless you can get down the baseline in less than a second or something, which he can't. So
he was fast, but not quite that fast. That would be
not that fast. Yeah.
Eli, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I don't know. I did not see a path for him to any sort of playing time. Like, I don't know. We were just talking about the infield situation. I don't know if the likes of someone like Gutierrez is going to stick around, but even if he doesn't, right, you've got Jorge Mateo, Ramon Urias, Jahmai Jones, who I think there's a good chance that all three of them break camp with the team. And then I think, like you said, Rylan Bannon, it's about time for him to come up. Terrin Vavra is probably going to be knocking on the door this year. I don't know, and then the year after that, there's going to be the likes of Jordan Westberg, Gunnar Henderson might start creeping up. It's just getting crowded, and we don't have time to wait for Richie Martin to try to figure something out. I think that, I think with the addition of Odor, I'm erring towards what Tyler said. I think that he locks down at least one spot every day in the infield, whether they rotate him between second and third. I think he's an everyday player. And so that means you're rotating all of those guys just within two spots in the lineup. I just don't see Richie Martin getting any kind of significant time. And he was just holding up space.
Yeah, it's a bummer because I think it sounded like 2020 was going to be the year the Orioles are really going to give him. He had a chance in 2019 as well, but 2020, I think coming into that, they were expecting to maybe use him as like a utility guy, use his wheels, really give him like a chance to be like that bench, that Ryan Flaherty guy. And then he got hurt, and then he got hurt again in 2021, and it just like never really happened. And now he's getting to the point where he's no longer a prospect. What you guys just said, that the path just was not there. And by the time maybe he figures it out, the Orioles are going to be ready to hopefully win again. And I can't see Richie Martin working his way into the roster. So unfortunately, he's still in the organization, so he could certainly come back. And maybe I would almost say like he will be back in some way, shape, or form. But in terms of giving him like any significant workload, I think that ship has sailed.
It's a long season and injuries happen. And
even beyond injuries, I was going to say, I think it's very likely that any one of Mateo, Urias, Jahmai Jones, are not on the roster like 2 months into the season. So
if Urias is not on the roster, we riot.
Well, that's true. He will probably be there. But like Mateo, we saw him for a month. It was super exciting, and then he got hurt. Mm-hmm. And Jones, obviously we love him. I think he's a good prospect. He's got some good stuff, but we just haven't seen that much from him. So a lot's up in the air is the only point. So yeah, I expect to see Richie Martin hit the bigs sometime next year, but I don't think he has any sort of significant role, that is.
I could agree with you on Jahmai Jones, but I think Urias and Mateo are almost certain locks to be on the team 2 months into the season.
I think Urias will be there. I think that, I don't know. Jorge Mateo has never hit as well as he did in that month with us in the major leagues. Right. So I don't know. I'm just kind of hedging bets. I'm not banking on that happening again, is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk Rule 5 protections. This was kind of a big thing for a few days on Orioles Twitter. Who are the Orioles going to protect? Who are they not going to protect? We talked about some of the guys that were available to be protected. And none of us, I think, got this exactly right because the Orioles threw a couple curveballs in here on the Rule 5 protections. The ones that were pretty unanimous on who we all thought they were going to protect, and everybody pretty much agreed. DL Hall, Kyle Bradish, and Terrin Vavra. Those guys are all fairly highly regarded prospects. We all know those names if you're paying attention to the Orioles minor league system at all. And those guys will likely be, well, we already thought they were going to be big league players sometime soon. Then there was some question on who they were going to protect beyond that. And who they ended up going with were Logan Gillaspie and Felix Bautista. Gillaspie was a guy that had a pretty good Arizona Fall League. I think the Orioles like his pitch shape and all that stuff. And then Felix Bautista is a guy that just throws really hard, really big guy, not a ton of control there, but you can't really necessarily teach a guy to throw 100 miles an hour, which is what Bautista does. So those are the guys that got added. Eli, I mean, any thoughts, I guess, especially on Gillaspie and Bautista getting added? Are you cool with that, or some concerns?
I'm cool with it. I guess the best thing I can say is that I don't know Gillaspie as well, but I can say that, I saw some videos online of him hitting 98 in the championship of the Arizona Fall League. Clearly he's got something there. The results weren't that great during the season, but I cannot say that I follow things close enough to know much more about him beyond that and what other podcasts could tell you. Felix Bautista, though, I mean, he's pretty incredible. So I can just tell you, across 3 levels this year, he threw 46 and 2/3 innings. He only gave up 20 hits. And, people talk about walking. Some people, even with all the walks that he has, his whip was only 1.07. The stuff is clearly just gross. I think I don't know. The number in my head is like 6'8". He's probably more along the lines of 6'6", because I think I'm just exaggerating things in my head. But he's a really, really tall dude. He gets, he's got a pretty high arm slot. So it's a hard fastball and it's coming very much downhill. I think it's really hard to hit. And in those same 46 and 2/3 innings, he struck out 77 guys. I think that, he is, if I were looking for somebody in the Rule 5 draft, somebody I could just kind of get through the year and, stash in the bullpen, use them kind of sparingly. Like that kind of velo is the type of tool you're looking for in the Rule 5 draft as a prospect that can translate fairly well. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to protect him.
Yeah, I was looking at his MILB page a second ago, and it has him listed at 6'5", 190, but the 190 seems low.
That's an absolute lie. You look at videos, he's got to be 250.
Yeah, and just
being
huge. Just being 6'5" alone, like you're gonna have some weight, and yeah, his legs are pretty big. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, it's interesting. Jesse, any thoughts on these guys that were added? And we can talk about exclusions here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of more what I was paying attention to.
Yeah, you want to talk about that? That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, of course, the one guy, Fenter, being excluded, especially when he was taken last year.
And he's gone now. The Giants have him.
Yeah, and that's kind of I feel like that's kind of significant. But yeah, I mean, as far as the actual protections go, I mean, I think all of them make sense. Losing any one of those those guys from the organization would have been a big hit. So,
yeah. Let's talk omissions. The one that I think like most of us were familiar with that did not get added that I think a lot of people expected was Robert Newstrom. He was, I think, a 5th-round pick out of Iowa a few years ago. Played at AAA this year, had a decent, solid season, and looks like a guy that is going to be in the big leagues sometime shortly, but he certainly didn't dominate AAA last year. The Orioles have omitted him. Nick Vespi, a left-handed pitcher who was really good in the fall league. Cody Sedlock, former first-round pick, they left him off last year. And then Ofelky Peralta, a guy that I feel like has been in the Orioles organization forever and is now Rule 5 eligible, and I think could possibly get taken. We'll see. That's also kind of like we're at this part of the rebuild with the Orioles where there's guys are just going to get taken in the Rule 5 because the Orioles are starting to have too many good players to keep on the 40-man roster at one time. I know that sounds a little comical given how bad the Orioles were last year, but when you group talent together all at the same age range, you're going to start to not have enough room for all of them. So we'll see. My eye is on Nick Vespi to potentially get taken just because I think to what you were saying, Eli, like looking for guys that are not easy, but easier to keep on a 40-man roster for an entire season and not have too many problems. A pitcher is certainly easier to do than a position player, and a left-handed pitcher who can, you can kind of protect him a little bit because you don't always need a left-handed pitcher. So he's who I've got my eye on. Eli, were there any other omissions you wanted to talk about or any on that list that are particularly interesting?
Yeah, I think that Vespi is a good call. I guess, if you could compare him to some major league player, I think honestly the good version of Paul Fry is pretty accurate. He's not like an extremely hard thrower. He's a 92, 93 kind of guy, but he's got a really good breaking ball. He commands the zone pretty well, and he will actually rack up some strikeouts and a left-handed reliever. So, I think that, like Tyler said, he's somebody that could get taken. He was in front of a lot of eyes out in the Arizona Fall League. And I don't know if it's a recency bias, but it feels like running him out there in front of all 30 teams where they're also evaluating their prospects. That kind of publicity just heightens the chances of him being taken. I think as far as surprises, I think I personally was most surprised to not see Newstrom on there. I thought he really took some strides this year, and he showed, we've talked about that like 475-foot home run he hit a couple times, but when you see that kind of raw power, that's just stuff that you don't find in the minor leagues. That's stuff that you don't find in prospects very often. And so, he hit a good number of home runs. He wasn't the most consistent throughout the year. He plays an okay defense, and he's limited to the corner outfield. So I think it makes sense that, if you're kind of placing bets on who would get taken, and if they get taken, who would make it through the entire year, I think it makes sense that Robert Newstrom is not higher on the list of who would make it through a full year, just because, it's average defense. And part of what makes him interesting is the pop. He doesn't have kind of the baseline of bat to ball skills that would translate in a fast jump to the MLB level. So I understand him being left off, but that was the one that to me was kind of like, ooh, I just wanted to see him there.
I mean, I think what you're kind of talking about, Eli, and what I'm thinking about too, is you're also thinking about the ceilings of these guys, right? And somebody like Vespi, don't get me wrong. I don't want him to get taken, right? But I definitely don't think he is as high a ceiling as some of these other guys on this list. So if we lost Vespi, it wouldn't be a catastrophic blow to the organization. It would be a nice piece that, so the thing that's interesting kind of about the Rule 5 draft is, you have all these different calculations running through, it's okay, are we looking at who has the highest ceilings? Are we looking at who actually has a chance to have a productive season, this upcoming year, and a team could, hide on their roster or make it through the year with them on their roster, right? There are all these different sorts of angles and things that you're thinking about when you are making these decisions about who to protect. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think it should be reiterated, like the Rule 5 draft has not happened yet because of the lockout and stuff. It would have already happened by the time we have this. But when it does happen, like the stakes are not terribly high. Like stars don't typically get taken in the Rule 5 draft. We were just talking about Richie Martin getting outrighted a couple minutes ago. The Orioles have Anthony Santander. Like that's a really good outcome for a Rule 5 pick to be Anthony Santander. And Santander, while he's a solid everyday player, he's definitely not a star. He's definitely not. I mean, at this point, I don't think he's the kind of guy you're going to get a huge haul for or anything like that. So, it's a fun thing to talk about. It gives you some insight into what the Orioles think about the players in their organization. But at the end of the day, it's probably not the biggest deal. It's just something that the Orioles, in particular, since like Dan Duquette took over back in 2011, this last decade, the Orioles have really put an emphasis on, whereas I don't feel like they did prior to that. And Mike Elias has kind of picked up the mantle to fill talent gaps that were maybe left by the previous regime. So yeah, just wanted to say that. Oh, and the other guy that did not get added that I think some people thought was going to get added was Adam Hall, mostly just because he's got higher prospect status, but he's pretty young, really struggled last year at high A. And he did not get taken in the minor league phase, and I don't expect him to get taken in the major league phase either. So that was a name I saw kicked around a little bit a few months ago. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, one of the things that I actually did not write anything about on here, on our little outline, but the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft did happen. And just while we're talking about that, the Orioles did select two guys. We got a guy who was kind of the consensus number one Rule 5 eligible pick, Nolan Hoffman, a reliever from the Mariners. I won't claim to know too much about this guy, but I just saw a couple videos. He throws as like a true sidearmer. It's not submarine, but it's just true sidearm. It's like up to 95, and it's got some ridiculous sink. So I think it's going to be pretty entertaining to watch. He had some really good results last year. We also drafted another right-handed reliever from the Rangers named Cole Uvila, who also had some pretty well. He he struck out a lot of guys. His ERA was high, but in the past he's had better results. I don't claim to know as much about him. And we traded for one more guy who was a Rule 5 pick of somebody else, and I'm struggling to remember his name.
Yeah. But, while you look for that, I can kind of speak. I don't know about these individual players necessarily. But what I can say is after the picks were taken, there were a lot of people on Twitter I saw that are more in the know on this type of thing, especially with pitch design and growing pitchers and all that stuff, especially I forget his name, but I know he worked for the Reds, but I think he's involved with Driveline. Those guys that are really big into more modern pitch analysis and improvement and all that stuff. And they're lauding these picks from the Orioles. They're super excited about it. And I think they even mentioned it's not that these guys are going to turn into useful major league players or even ever sniff the major leagues, but the fact that these are the types of players the Orioles are getting speaks to where the minds are at of the Orioles decision makers and the type of characteristics they're looking for when evaluating talent. And that's all more forward thinking. That tends to be more indicative of future success at the big league level. Which is nice to hear. It sucks that the Orioles are continuously losing 100 games a year, but it's nice to see that some of these things going on in the background that will not bear fruit immediately are being complemented by people that are a little more aware of how these things go and how they harvest these types of talents. So I thought that was really interesting and encouraging. Eli, were you able to find that guy? Oh, sorry, Jesse, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I just think also, yes, not even if these guys, which they probably won't, like you said, make the major leagues, the thing is that, it's very important, all players in the entire organization have a role, some are much smaller roles than other roles, right? But all of them have, a role in the entire success of the organization, right? I mean, even the top prospects, these guys are teammates of, playing with, right, these other lower tier prospects, right? So, they all have interactions with each other, and they all contribute to the overall progress of the organization, even if we never see them in an Orioles uniform. So,
yeah, absolutely.
I did find it.
Nice.
So right-handed pitcher Tommy Wilson was acquired from Seattle for cash considerations. 25-year-old, he was selected by the Mariners from the Mets in the minor league Rule 5 draft, and then they flipped him to us. So yeah, it looks like he got a little cup of tea in Double-A, didn't do too much. Like nothing bad, but only 10 games. But one good thing about him, he tweeted out, "Would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Mariners organization for everything they've done for me. It's been a fantastic few hours with you all, and I'm thankful for the opportunity." And he put a smiley face. And then he said, "Let's do this thing at the Orioles." So seems like he's a funny dude. But yeah, so the Orioles basically infuse, 3 right-handed relievers into the system. Like Tyler said, all seem moderately interesting, particularly the first guy. And I don't know, I've heard talk that Hoffman could even make the major leagues next year sometime and slot into the bullpen at some point. So,
and that's what I'm interested to see too, because typically the major league phase, I think, happens first, then the minor league phase. But since this is out of order, I believe the eligibility stuff is the same for the minor league phase and the major league phase. It's just a level of protection difference. So I think that all these players taken in the minor league phase could potentially get taken in the major league phase, if I'm understanding it properly. So like that adds an element of confusion to me. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but as far as I understand it, the eligibility is all the same. It's just a protection thing. And since none of these guys are on the Orioles 40-man roster, they would all be eligible to be taken. So we'll see. Maybe don't fall in love with these guys too fast, but yeah, something I thought about.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I wonder if they might strike some extra thing to say that if these players were taken in the Rule 5 draft, that they're then not eligible, or minor league phase, then they're not eligible for major.
Yeah, because it's interesting that the guy Hoffman was like the consensus like top guy available. I don't know how you do that without having a major league phase, but I don't know. We'll learn. We'll learn about that.
We will.
Some other minor league notes. The Orioles did release Brooke Kriske. I think they did that so that he could pursue a KBO deal. Am I correct about that? I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that is right.
Okay, so
I should say it's Brooks. I just made a typo with Tyler.
I thought so too, and I was like, Brooke is a girl's name.
No, Tyler ran through it. He's just doing his job, and I set him up for failure.
It's okay. I should have checked that. But yeah, so good luck to Brooks in the KBO. That's awesome. The Orioles, we were happy about this. I don't know. I always say his name wrong. Who did the Orioles re-sign to a minor league deal, Eli?
Marcus Duplan.
I don't know why I have such difficulty with that. But that's interesting. That's exciting.
It's not that hard.
It's not. I think I said it wrong the first time, and now I've like psyched myself out. Marcus Duplan. It's the A is long. It's a long A. We got it. But that's exciting because I think we all kind of liked what we saw from him last year. It's a bit of a bummer that he's on a minor league deal instead of on the 40-man, but he'll be at spring training, so that's cool. Jesse, any thoughts?
I mean, you said it exactly. I mean, I'm glad he's back. So, yeah,
cool. And then the last minor league signing, at least of note that we have recently, is that the Orioles signed catcher Jacob Nottingham to a minor league deal. And I mean, right now he's like the top catcher in the on the depth chart in the organization. If you ignore like Adley Rutschman, I guess, but which is hard to do. But do we think Jacob Nottingham will be on the Orioles opening day roster? I say yes.
Yeah, I think yes. The question is whether he will be the starting catcher or the backup. And what he should be is the backup who gets kicked to gets kicked to AAA as soon as Adley comes up. but I'm scared that they're just going to try to like survive 20 games with Jacob Nottingham as the starting catcher and then push him to the backup role. I don't know. What I'm hoping for is that the Orioles sign like a bottom tier major league catcher.
Right.
And then he splits time with Adley and Adley gets some DH time. And
that's what I think the Orioles are going to do, because I think the Orioles are going to feel like they need a major league level, like you said, a bottom tier, cheaper priced major league level catcher to be paired with Adley. Like, and if he's starting the first, few games of the season, right? I think it's very important that the Orioles sign a major league level catcher, a veteran who's had experience. Definitely.
Well, and it's going to be interesting to see how the CBA addresses stuff like this, because it may be adjusted to the point that it doesn't make any sense to leave Adley Rutschman in AAA for 3 weeks or whatever. You know? Because they've been talking about you would just hit free agency at 30 or whatever. And I think if they did that, Rutschman's already 24. Like, that's 6 years. They would just bring him up immediately. So we'll see. But I do agree that, like, if Rutschman's up, I would rather have him paired with some veteran that is the backup than Jacob Nottingham, who, I mean, he has played in the big leagues in like 4 different seasons, but I'm not sure I'd call him a veteran based on that.
He's only been in, I just saw it on Trade Rumors. He's only gotten into 53 games at the big league level. So definitely not a veteran by any means. Yeah, he's a veteran in the same way that like Austin Wynns is a veteran. Like, right. He's been around, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, to this point, that's all the Orioles movement that we have on here. Let us know if we missed something, but I think we covered it all. I did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eli. I was just going to say, we did just go through and sign like 5 international free agent pitchers. And I don't know a single thing about any one of them, so I didn't think it was worth saying. But when you said, let us know if we missed something, I just wanted to clarify that we are aware of some other tinier things, Yeah, the Orioles announced. This is what made it in. Yeah. The Orioles announced their coaching staff today, but again, like, I don't know how interesting that is, because not that we know anything specific about any of the guys. Chris Holt's back as the pitching director. I think that's the big one. They got co-hitting coaches now, but like, if we miss anything significant, let us know. To the coaching staff, Ryan Fuller, who has largely been credited with a lot of the offensive improvements in the minor leagues, has gotten the promotion to co-hitting coach, along with a guy we yanked from the Twins. So that's one little note on the coaching staff. And again, that was another set of moves that like people in the know were like, oh, this is great. Like, these guys are amazing. Not right. I don't know anything about it, but if people are saying that, then I believe it, So good job, Mike Elias. We are drinking the Kool-Aid, baby. Yeah. I mean, we'll try to be like, that's the same thing I say about like when we're analyzing like draft picks or like prospects, like we don't go see all these guys. We have to go based off what scouts say and kind of regurgitate that a little bit and occasionally read between the lines. So take everything we say with a bit of a grain of salt. But yeah, I will say I was reading The Athletic this morning and they were giving grades to all of the teams off seasons so far. Do you know what they gave the Orioles on an A to F grade? F. No. Wow. D? Yeah, D. The Yankees also have a D, so there's that. Okay. I don't know how fair that is, but I don't totally disagree with it either. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if the evaluation criteria is how did they make the major league team better, I'd give us an F. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We could have signed Corey Seager. We got plenty of payroll. We could have. The Rangers weren't that much better than the Orioles last year. At all. Yeah. The Rangers, my hot take is the Rangers are still pretty bad, but at least they have Marcus Semien and Corey Seager now, but they're still pretty bad. Yeah. It's really like
smoke and mirrors, you're saying, Tyler.
Their pitching staff is just still really bad. Jordan Lyles was on their pitching staff last year. So
correct.
But they do have a lot of pretty advanced prospects, like, the number one of which is Jack Leiter, who should be up pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, both of those guys, I think Seager was 10 years and Semien was 7. Both of those guys will be around for it, and it's probably going to be 2023 that the Rangers have a reasonable pitching staff, you know?
Yeah, well, and they're talking about going after Clayton Kershaw because he's from Texas and all that stuff.
Right.
But I don't know. I kind of want to see him go back to the Dodgers, wrap things up where you started him. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, I mean, that's it. That's all there is for right now. We'll have another episode if something really cool happens, like a lockout ends or something like that.
Don't count on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess before the show, we were, I was suggesting the possibility of having, a counter for, the number of lockout episodes. But I guess why would we have an episode during the lockout? Because the Orioles aren't going to sign anybody or do anything. So yeah, that just occurred to me, actually. Yeah.
So to that effect, we had a riveting discussion on the quality of gingerbread cookies.
Oh, wow.
And the contributions that a glass of milk can make to a couple cookies. Yeah. So, maybe we could jump on here, talk about that for a little while.
Oh, yeah, the cookie pod. We could recap our holidays and just change the subject matter of the podcast entirely.
Yeah, so it's the warehouse pod, but it's like a warehouse that is,
the cookie
storing,
warehouse.
like packaging and shipping cookies. We just changed the warehouse.
Wow, that is a jump. We'll get Giada De La Rentas on. Is that how you say her name from Food Network? Yeah. We love Giada. We're big Giada. Great. Big Giada pod. Jesse doesn't know who we're talking about.
I don't.
Dude, Jesse. So Giada is like Dad's number 2 after Emeril Lagasse.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Jesse's not interested at all. He thinks this conversation should be done with.
That's okay.
It's fine.
We'll keep it on.
It's fine. I'm tolerant of it.
Yeah, Jesse, if I will try and post this video. Jesse is currently tucked in to his bed. He has the covers up. He has a pillow behind him. He's very comfortable.
Yeah. I am. It's but again, let me remind you, because we've had this discussion before. It's really about the space of the place that I'm in that makes this the best option from a comfort perspective and from like an effectiveness perspective.
Okay.
So yeah.
So if you hear him starting to fall asleep as the podcast goes on,
no, that never happens. That never happens. Okay. I mean, how can I fall asleep during discussions about the Orioles?
I know.
Can't do that.
That's true. That's
because the Orioles got a D.
I'm not locked out. I'm locked in to those conversations.
Oh,
yeah. So,
if you do want to listen to it, if there's more stuff that comes up that's worthy of a podcast, we will have one. The best way to ensure that you're aware of that podcast is to follow us on all the different social media sites at The Warehouse Pod, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You should also subscribe to us if you don't already. We post these on YouTube every time we have an episode, so go over there. I will be having a baby here directly in the next few days. Once I'm on family leave, I'm going to try and do some things to up the podcast game. So you got to get in now on the ground floor so you feel better about yourself and you can brag to people about it.
Yes, it's really just so that, when we have millions and millions of listeners, really like when the entire DMV area is listening to the Warehouse Pod, you can say, I knew them before they were cool.
Yeah, you can do a whole hipster thing with it. So that's...
we're doing that for you. We're giving you that opportunity right here.
Yeah. We're 3 or 4 years in now. We figured now we'd actually try. So that's what 2022 is going to be all about. We're rebuilding just like the Orioles. All right, Eli, where can people follow you on social?
Pretty much the only place is at Elijah Ginsburg on Twitter.
Cool. And Jesse, how about you?
People can follow me at Juggernaut8678 on Instagram and Twitter.
Nice. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well at _Ty Young, as well as CamdenChat.com. So that's it, boys. We'll be back whenever there's news to be back about. Sound good? Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, thank you so much for listening to The Warehouse Pod. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.